I'm going to tell you, I have this feeling right now that maybe I have finally arrived. This is the first time I've been introduced at any event by John Burton. A quick show of hands here. Speaking of John Burton, how many people were on hand at the dedication of the new California Democratic Party headquarters this afternoon? Just a handful of us, right? I got to tell you, for those who haven't had a chance to see it, you have to go check it out. It was just about a month ago, right after the primary, that the party had the ceremony dedicating the building. And, we're Democrats and we're proud Democrats, right? So all elements of the building, Shonda and Angie did a great job of having the building represent what we are about. Yes, it was built union. Yes, it's LEED certified and sustainable and all that stuff, but even the subtle details like parking spots at the building. You pull up and it's not parking spot number 1 or 2 or 3. They're not named or lettered. One parking spot is labeled equity. Another parking spot is labeled diversity. The other one is the pride, courage, and on and on and on. A reflection of our democratic values through and through. And you couldn't capture the essence any better than as you walk in the front doors, you go underneath the sign that says the John Burton Democratic Party headquarters. Put your hands together for our chairman, John Burton. Our party is here because of you and your leadership. And that's not lost on all of us, because the work at the headquarters, the work here this weekend, and the work in campaign headquarters throughout the state of California this year is yet again important. A lot of candidates, measures on the number of ballot, a lot of reasons and names to organize and mobilize and turn voters out this November. And so when I was asked to speak at the luncheon today, I thought to myself, well, what is there to talk about? We're California, of course we're Democrat. And it feels damn good to be a Democrat. But I quickly reminded myself that for the last several years, it wasn't so easy. I used to do my share of traveling throughout the state, on political travel or other organizations I'm involved with. And for the better part of the last decade, I got 2 questions more often than anything else. Number 1, what's it like working with Schwarzenegger? That's a tough one to answer over and over and over. And the other one was, so isn't California broke yet? Remember those days? Living under a Governor Schwarzenegger when budget deficits were the norm? Well, what a difference a governor makes. Right. What a difference 2010 made, both with the election of Governor Brown and thanks to a lot of people in this room, the passage of Proposition 25 allowing us to pass a budget on a majority vote basis, not a 2/3 vote basis. With those 2 things together, it's no surprise that we have on-time budgets now. Heaven forbid, on-time budgets. And not just because of the shift in the economy, but because of the tough decisions made by Governor Brown and the Democratic legislature for on-time balanced budgets, and now we have small but surpluses nonetheless, surplus state budgets. 2 years ago, we had 2/3 majority in both houses to go alongside our Democratic governor. And so, again, we've gone from Schwarzenegger budget deficit days to days where a Democratic governor and a Democratic majority legislature is raising the minimum wage. We're passing balanced budgets, surplus budgets for that matter. We're reforming how education funding is distributed in California public schools. We're talking investments in transportation and water, and we're talking healthcare. California should be proud of itself as being the one nation, the one state in the nation more than any other that embraced the spirit of the Affordable Care Act. And it's no coincidence that more previously uninsured Americans here in California now have health care because we embraced it and focused on implementation. You've heard it all, pre-existing conditions, keeping your kids on your plan until they're 25, not having to cut them off when they're 18. What a difference a governor makes, what a difference a Democratic governor and Democratic two-thirds majority in the legislature can make for tackling the issues that we have as Californians. And a more recent example of the contrast, not just with other states, and a few years ago, but to the nation's capital. The conversation about immigration. And I can tell you, when I go to the capital, Washington, D.C., to work with a delegation there on immigration reform, they scratch their heads and tell us how tough it is, either being in the minority or even with this 60-vote threshold rule in the U.S. Senate, how tough it is to do the right thing that we call immigration reform. We're here in California, Democratic governor, Democratic legislature. We're passing and signing the driver's license bill. We're passing and signing the Trust Act. We're passing and signing the DREAM Act. We're leading the nation. We're showing the way. Balanced budgets, budget surpluses, health care insurance, our own version of immigration reform, a rebounding economy. With Democratic leadership, that's what we get. But there's more to do. This year I've been watching pretty closely the implementation of the bill that I introduced a couple of years ago that sought to build on the motor-voter model. Look, we're all proud Democrats, but we're organizers and activists in our party. We all know what the motor-voter law is, right? Any Californian in the process of doing business with the Department of Motor Vehicles, if you're otherwise eligible, we can and should register to vote, right? Right. We can and should update our registration if we need to. But why not do the same at community colleges? Why not do the same at the UC and CSU? Why not do the same at EDD? Why not do the same at Veterans Affairs? Why not do the same with Covered California, our state's health benefits exchange? Those millions of Californians who were previously uninsured coming in for health care, are otherwise eligible to register and vote. Let's register them to vote in the process. What a concept, right? So I had a bill that would require us to do that. It was passed by the legislature and signed into law. That's the good news. The bad news is, it wasn't quite implemented the way it should have been. But it gets better. Our friends at the ACLU sued the state of California to force its implementation. And this summer, there was a voter registration card mailed to every person who even started the process of signing up for health care through Covered California. And in the first couple of months, 25,000 new registrants have signed up to register to vote in California. I don't know what the final numbers are, but something tells me there's going to be a few more Democrat boxes checked than Republican boxes checked on those forms. And as Deborah Bowen put it in the hearing earlier this year, this stands to be the largest voter registration drive in California history. It's just one example that if we're smart as Democrats and think about our values and how we can further them, there's still a lot of work and a lot of opportunity in improving civic engagement, voter engagement. And I relish in it because that's what I've been doing for the better part of the last 20 years. I met some of the people in this room when I was a young campaign organizer, starting in 1994 and 1996. Over the course of a few years, I was a campaign manager in some legislative races. In the fall of 1998, Ray Davis asked me to serve as the Southern California field director for the Democratic Party. 13 offices, 40 organizers in Fresno and National City. I've been in the trenches. I not only have done the work, I relish the work. Because it's easy as campaigns to kind of fall into the misleading groove of just talking to 505 voters or permanent absentees that vote all the time. The hard work, the real work, the work that makes a difference is getting that person who's been eligible but has never registered to vote to finally take that step. The hard work, the real work that makes the biggest difference is not getting the 505 voter to the polls. It's the 1 of 5 voter to the polls, or the 1 of 10 voter to the polls. But we can do that over and over and over again. There won't be another close race in this state ever again because the tide will continue to tilt Democratic. And so I can stand here as a candidate for Secretary of State talking about strategies and ideas for voter registration, voter education, increasing turnout, and campaign finance reform, and even why we need to make it easier to start a business in California. But I want to end with this. The most important reason why I decided to run for Secretary of State in the state of California right now is because of voting rights. We've been seeing it for many, many cycles, but you saw in 2012 what I saw in 2012. Not so much here in California, but name the state. Texas, Florida, Wisconsin, Georgia, Ohio, so many others, state after state after state. In fact, hundreds of bills in the last 2 years alone introduced in dozens of states, making it more difficult for working men and women to register to vote. Laws to make it more difficult for working men and women to actually cast a ballot and participate in our elections. How undemocratic, how un-American. Voting rights are under attack in the United States of America, whether you realize it or not. And step number one, we have to say, not here in California, that will never see the light of day. Step number two, California prides itself in being a policy leader, right? When it comes to renewable energy, we have our goals, 33% renewables by the year 2020. When it comes to climate change, we have our goals, 80-32, climate reduction by 2020, 2050. When it comes to coastal protection, worker protection, we have all these numeric goals that we're constantly striving for, but we don't have any goals laid out when it comes to civic engagement. So let's say, hey, 1 million new voters by the next election cycle, because when more people vote, the more democratic the process is, both with a small d and a big d when it comes to here in California. The right measures win at the ballot, the right measures lose. The right candidates get elected, and the wrong ones lose. Let me share with you a couple of quotes from our president, because I think that he probably put it best. And just this last April, he says, the stark simple truth is this: the right to vote is threatened today in a way that has not been seen since the Voting Rights Act became law nearly 50 years ago. The real voter fraud is people who try to deny our rights by making bogus arguments about voter fraud. That explains all these ill-founded laws introduced, and sometimes passed in these other states. And if you take what's happened in those other states, together with some bad decisions by the Supreme Court of the United States, count them: the gutting of Section 4 of the Voting Rights Act, the Citizens United decision, and the McCutcheon decision. In 10 short months, the Supreme Court of the United States has made it easier for the wealthy to influence elections and harder for poor people to cast a ballot. That's a simple math. Easier for the wealthy to influence elections and tougher for poor people to cast a ballot. So we have a lot to be proud of as California Democrats, but as we do every cycle, we stand together and say there's a lot more work to do. And once again, it is an important election year, because those voter suppression efforts that are in other states right now are trying to find creative ways to find their way to California. And let me be clear, protecting voting rights isn't just about protecting voting rights. Voting rights is a vehicle for the agenda of those who want to roll back the clock on equality, who want to roll back the clock on choice, who want to roll back the clock on immigration reform. This is just a tactic today. How un-American. But California knows better, and we're going to continue to lead the way. And if we do our work as organizers, as mobilizers, whether we get people to vote by mail, vote at the polls, ballot on demand in some counties, or in a vote-mobile in Santa Cruz County, if we get people to vote, we'll have even more to celebrate this fall. And to do so, I'll end with this, requires work. Requires work of a lot of us in all corners of the state. And my pledge to you, if elected to support this November, is to work in partnership with you in all corners of the state, to do the registering, to do the educating, to do the mobilizing, to do of the turnout. And don't just take my word for it that I promise it in the future. I've been doing it. Many of you know that when I announced my candidacy, I promised to visit all 58 counties in California. I've been to 40. 18 more to go. 18 more to go. So if you're in the Bay Area or LA, I've been there. If you're from Siskiyou or Modoc, I'm coming. But it's been a great ride with candidates. Just honestly, it takes me back to my early days on campaigns and why it was so important. Because each and every cycle, it seems there's so much at stake. But thank you for your support. I appreciate your support in the primary. I look forward to earning your support again in November and to doing a hell of a lot of good work for you in the years ahead. Thank you very much.